Surely it would be pointless for me to jump on here and tell you guys about Radiohead, right? I mean, they're one of the most celebrated and popular bands ever, to the point where the fandom is split into different levels, like one of those iceberg videos on YouTube. The more you know about the band and the more edgy you are, you go deeper and deeper into the iceberg until you find yourself at the last level, unironically enjoying the King of Limbs. But aside from all the jokes, I do believe that their discography is quite impressive, with not one or two, but multiple albums that I myself consider to be better than good. So good, in fact, that one of the most heated debates you can have related to Radiohead is deciding which album could be called their best. This question is hard for a couple of reasons. Number one would be the fact that all of these albums find themselves at the very highest level of quality the band has to offer, so it's kind of tricky choosing based on quality. It's always going to boil down to preference. And then number two is the fact that all of these albums are extremely different from each other, which makes the comparison even more difficult and, complicated. Which is why in this video I picked what in my opinion are the three best albums by the band, and hopefully together in a civilized way with a conversation we can decide which is the best album by the band. Before we get into it, guys, I have to remind you that this is only my personal opinion, so if you have your own, and I'm pretty sure you do, go ahead and leave it down below in the comments. I'll make sure to check it out and give you my opinion on your opinion. I don't want to make the intro too long, so let's just go on with the first album, OK Computer. This is a very interesting record. I'm pretty sure that 50% of the Radiohead fan base will tell you that this is their best. It is held high as one of the greatest albums ever made, and actually it has the title of being the Sgt. Pepper's of the 90s. And while these sort of titles are often exaggerations, and as a Beatles fan myself, I would have no problem saying it is, it's hard to say that that's the case with OK Computer. This album meant a huge left turn by the band after the electronic elements added to the alternative rock formula that we're using in previous albums matched perfectly with the digital era narrative that they were using in the album about machines and how it affected our world, often painting a very dystopian world with great precision, where as technology advances it isolates us and it eats away our humanity more and more. It also has some of the most recognizable songs by the band like Karma Police, No Surprises, and Paranoid Android. But personally for me, my favorite moments on the record will always be the more dramatic and theatrical cuts, like The Tourist, for example, one of my favorite songs by the band, and Exit Music for Film, songs that truly bring forth the narrative of the album and make the record even more immersive than what it already was thanks to the instrumentation. Truly among the best albums of the 90s, and a very important one, if not the most important one for the band's evolution. Now let's go with Kid A, and I have to say that this is a bit of a weird album, mainly because after listening to this record, all the other experimental cuts the band has to offer feel a little bit underwhelming due to the sheer uniqueness of this album. In a world where OK Computer is called a left turn, Kid A should be called a total U-turn. Thom Yorke only sings in half of the songs, and a lot of times his voice is modified to the point where you don't even recognize him. The instrumentation feels way more digital, but not because of the electronic sounds that were used in OK Computer. This time around, the band creatively combines that sound with jazz music, ambient music, and even folk to create an even more immersive experience. Tracks like Everything in Its Right Place, the title track, and Idiotique seem to morph the band's identity into this digital entity that somehow maintains its humanity through songs like How to Disappear Completely and Motion Picture Soundtrack. There's very few albums in the music industry that feel as unique as Kid A. The only downside people see to this album is the fact that once you take the songs outside of the record, they don't really stand that well on their own, but personally I think that just adds up to the fact of how perfectly packed the record is. So yeah, truly an amazing record, and definitely the most immersive album the band has to offer. It's time to go for In Rainbows, and if I'm being honest here, I have to say it, for me this is the strongest track list in the band's discography. Every single song on this album can stand on its own, giving the album a more classical feel. There's also the fact that its release was incredibly impactful for the music industry with the whole pay what you want online marketing price. If you guys don't know, the band announced the album 10 days prior to its release, which is already kind of crazy marketing wise, but also they decided to make fans pay whatever they wanted to pay. If you want to pay $0, you pay $0. If you want to do 50 cents, you do 50 cents. If you want to do $1 million, you do $1 million. I believe the reason why they did it was because they wanted to see how much fans value their music by making them pay whatever it is they wanted to pay. This was seen as madness at the time, don't get me wrong, and it truly showed how the modern era of music and streaming was going to look like. But aside from sales and controversies, this album truly shows the perfect representation of the band's creative vein meeting their roots. Since this feels like a more old-fashioned rock album with the same alternative alternative elements the band was known for, like string arrangements, creative drum patterns, peculiar instrumentation that make the album feel special without taking the genre to the very edge of the world like OK Computer and Kid A did. Every single song here feels like a different version of the band, as if you can make an album out of each song on the record. Naming some of these songs would be kind of silly, since once again the consistency on this album is incredible, but some of my favorite tracks would be Jigsaw Falling Into Place, House of Cards, Videotape, Weird Fishes, and All I Need. Truly some of the greatest songs by the band. I will say though that if you're into the more experimental side of the band, you're definitely going to enjoy records like Kid A, OK Computer, and maybe Amnesiac more than this one. This is not the most mind-blowing album by the band, but in my opinion is the most effective one and the most consistent one in terms of quality. Now I think it's pretty obvious that all three of these albums deserve to be in the conversation of the band's best, and actually depending on the context of the question, I believe the answer can change. I mean, we're talking about importance and influence here, because if that's the case, I'm pretty sure that a lot of you will agree with me when I say that OK Computer should be the one taking the win. Are we talking about experimentation and uniqueness here? Because if that's the case, I'm pretty sure that a lot of you will agree with me when I say that few albums in the music industry push the same buttons as Kid A. But if you were to ask me which album serves as the band's peak, which album has all the different elements that make Radiohead such a great band, like experimentation, creative songwriting, great performances, and great production, I think that would be In Rainbows. To me, all the different ideas the band collected in previous albums were morphed and fused into the alternative art rock sound that In Rainbows has to offer. That's why I think it's such a great album, one of the greatest of all time actually. I truly feel like I'm listening to every version of the band in just one record, which is why when I'm asked the question, what is the greatest Radiohead album, my answer will always be In Rainbows. However, that is only my personal opinion. If you have your own, and I'm pretty sure you do, go ahead and leave it down below in the comments. I want to have a small conversation with you. Which album do you think is the greatest? Which album do you think it's the worst? Do you agree that In Rainbows represents all of the band's ideas morphed into just one project? I truly hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any other videos that I upload. If you want me to talk about any other topic related to music, if you want me to check out an album, a song, or an artist, go ahead and leave it down below as well, and I'll make sure to fulfill your request as soon as I can. Once again, I hope that you enjoyed, guys, and I hope that I can see you soon with a new video. But until then, bye.